And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone. Gone.
All right. Hey, what's up, everyone? It's James here from Global Crypto, and this is season 3 of the Global Crypto podcast, proudly brought to you by FTX. Big thanks to our new sponsors, FTX, who are expanding into Africa. Pretty exciting times, especially considering the South African FSCA have had a couple of things to say about FTX recently. But perfect time to have someone like Laura Shin on the podcast. Most of you should know who she is. Of course, she's the host of the Unchained podcast. She has a whole bunch of incredible bylines that will pretty much knock your socks off. We're talking Wall Street Journal, NY Times, Newsweek, NPR. What a privilege to have you on African Media. Laura Shin, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
So let's talk about your background as a journalist, right? I mean, it's kind of exciting for me to interview a journalist, a fellow journalist here, and a Stanford graduate at that. But you graduated all the way back in '97. Back then, did you know that you wanted to focus on tech?
No, not at all. I mean, I studied like philosophy and literature. I mean, I knew I wanted to write. You know, I've known that since I was a child. I love doing that. That's one of my favorite things in the world. But really, yeah, no, that was not at all what my interest was. And, in fact, yeah, naturally it was more like in the arts, which is what I did cover quite a bit early on as a journalist. But then, yeah, kind of as time went on, I realized, I'm kind of interested in a lot of things. And actually, when I finally went to journalism school, 11 years after undergrad, I thought that I wanted to cover climate change because I thought, this will be a beat that, media outlets will be interested in until like for the rest of my life. And I graduated in 2008. And because it was the financial crisis, actually, none of them were interested. And yeah, so eventually, it took me a while actually to get hired back into journalism because the industry shrank so much during that period. But when I finally did, it was covering personal finance, and it was through personal finance that I ended up covering fintech and crypto. And now here I am.
Yeah, I mean, it's such an incredible journey. I mean, as I mentioned earlier in the intro, bylines like Newsweek, Wall Street Journal, NY Times. I'm curious, when you graduated or after you graduated, were those sort of targets for you? Because a lot of journalists and writers especially kind of look at those and say, hey, I want an article in the Wall Street Journal, for instance.
Honestly, no. I mean, I graduated and I basically got a job teaching English in Indonesia and loved that, had so much fun doing that. And, I worked at the Stanford Daily throughout college. And like I said, I just love writing. And I had even done like newspaper in high school. And so then after that kind of first year, just teaching ESL, I was like, now I'll probably just go into journalism. But I didn't like think about it too much. And I don't even remember. I think I like applied for an internship at Newsweek, but they didn't accept me. But the woman has said, when you move to New York, get in touch with me. And then, they just hired me, basically. I know I would love to be like, I had this plan and blah, 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 but no, I didn't. And I was just like very naive. I was from the Midwest. My parents were not in this world. Like it was just, I didn't really know much. And I just sort of stumbled into these things. And, hilariously, if I remember correctly, so I don't even remember I remember how I got the Wall Street Journal job. I was really into dancing a lot. Wow. And I was dancing a lot of Argentine tango. And I was about to take a job at Fox News, actually, when I was leaving Newsweek. But I met this guy at the Wall Street Journal through tango. And he was like, actually, well, we're hiring. And so like literally, I think I had already accepted the Fox job. But then, I got this Wall Street Journal thing and it just seemed like a better job. So yeah, the last minute I just switched. Please, I don't want to make it sound like I'm, just this, what's the word? Just kind of, very ambitious and calculated person with my career, because it was just, I was just doing things that were interesting to me, essentially. And hilariously, I think if I remember correctly, the tango thing came up again when I switched to the New York Times, because I saw that they had this job that was an even better fit for what my interests were than what I was doing at the Wall Street Journal. But I was having a hard time like even getting an interview or anything. And then I randomly through tango, a guy who worked at the Wall Street or at the New York Times. And I said, because he could see the internal job postings or something. And anyway, somehow through that, I think if I remember correctly, I got that interview too. So no, I wasn't super calculated about it. And that's why also I quit those jobs fairly quickly. So if you look at my resume, I've literally never held a full-time job more than 2 years at any single place. And, I've mostly worked for myself, actually. I really like working for myself.
Yeah, that's a key part of your TEDx talk, where you bring up the fact that because of how you were raised, you kind of didn't fit in with the sort of conformist style of corporate America, didn't want to be told what to do all the time. But did that lend itself to more freelancing, or what you're doing now, which is actually running your own businesses?
So, actually, when you are freelancing, you are running your own business.
Yeah.
I definitely I'm doing it better now than I did earlier in my career, because I tried this in my 20s and just did not have the what's the word, kind of like, personal financial wherewithal. Like I just basically didn't know how to manage my money very well, which if you're trying to run your own business, it's just not going to work out super well. I mean, I did okay on the, in terms of where I was actually publishing. But then I sort of wisened up, and so now, that I'm doing it again later, I'm definitely doing it more smartly. And obviously it has grown into a bigger business where I do have different people working for me now, which wasn't the case before when I was, well, actually, that's not true. I did occasionally have different people working for me, but in a pretty limited way. Whereas like now, there's people who are just involved in a very regular way through my work. So.
Yeah. So talking about your work now, something that intrigues me is your very strong portrayal of independent advertisers and independent sponsors in your various media assets, right? And very strong, especially on LinkedIn, where you bang the drum of don't contact me for promos, advisory, investment, or anything of that nature. How do you, as someone who is extremely popular in this industry, curb the natural human desire for wealth to want to take on some of those offers?
This is such a funny question, because people on Twitter and other social media are constantly asking me. Actually, I'm going to step back and just give the full story so people really understand. So when I first started covering this, when I was at Forbes, I actually, at a certain point, I did buy some Bitcoin and Ether, because Forbes has a policy that if you just disclose that you own something that you're covering, then that's fine. But then when I left, I wanted to be able to write for any publication. And there are a lot of other news organizations that have stricter policies where you cannot own what you cover. So since I wanted to be able to write for those publications, I, was just like, okay, so I'm going to sell or give away these different, the Bitcoin and the Ether that I bought. And so during, after that, like there were a lot of people, they sometimes they say things to me like, have fun staying poor or whatever. And I have said to them, oh, I'm having so much fun covering this industry as a journalist that you couldn't pay me enough money to stop doing it. You know what I'm saying? And I would love, like, certain of these publications are like my dream publications, like that I've been dreaming of writing for way longer than Bitcoin even existed. So in that regard, it's actually not hard. But it's funny how often this comes up, because one of my good friends here in the US, she's Turkish, but some of her friends back in Turkey listen to my show, but I haven't met them, obviously. And I guess they had said to her, like, how can she not own, like, da 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 da? But she's also a journalist like me, and I was like, because it's her work, like this is what she does. So yeah, no, it's not hard. But the other thing I wanted to say about the LinkedIn notice is that I do have a lot of people, they want me to invest, or they want me to be like an advisor, but just for the position I have, like I can't, it's more like a referee position. Like you don't want to affect play.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to, not get involved. I want to be able to cover whatever I want to cover without having different conflicts. And, even now, because I've had many crypto companies that sponsored my show, now you'll notice, like in my newsletter or on the show, if that company ever comes up, I have to say, they were a previous sponsor of the show, or they're currently a sponsor, whatever. So I just try to keep it all transparent that way.
How do you speak to a growing media industry in this niche, right? I mean, crypto media has exploded. You have YouTube and podcasts everywhere you look, which obviously just opens up the channels for remarkable misinformation, which is a talk for later. But how do you see the current lay of the land in the specific niche of media, and I'm talking crypto media, where it really is just mostly pay to play at the moment?
Well, I don't know if I'd say it's mostly pay to play, but definitely there's a good chunk of it is, and that's a little bit disheartening, obviously. I would hope that either through experience or through getting more involved, that people would learn to educate themselves about what are the trusted sources. I definitely, just as a journalist in general, feel very passionately about the problems that misinformation and disinformation cause in our society, and feel that, fact checking and verifying things like those, it's possible to do that. It takes time. But it bothers me when people kind of say like, oh, like it's not possible. And I'm like, wait, I've done this for decades. Like this is, there are many people that, this is our job. It's possible, obviously for certain things, maybe you end up kind of just, if it was like this event happened and the two people that were there dispute how it happened, eventually at a certain point, if they can't prove, you might just have to present the two viewpoints and then be like, we can't know. But for many, many, many things you can verify. So like I said, I just would hope that for people, as they kind of like, learn more in the industry through both their own trial and error of like, maybe trusting a certain source and then finding out later that it's actually not trustworthy or whatever, that eventually they come to find what are the trustworthy sources.
Let's talk about when you first started covering Bitcoin and digital assets. Obviously, I know it came from the Forbes editor asking you to cover the FinTech 50. To our viewers, you can go and check it out on Laura's TEDx talk, where she talks about how she first got into crypto. But Laura, what I want to ask is, when did you realize you wanted to cover it full time? And what was the motivation for that?
Oh my gosh. So soon after I started covering Bitcoin. Wow. So I first started covering it in May 2015. And again, I didn't know much about it. I just was doing it as part of this FinTech 50 list. But I remember that I had this other book idea at the time. And I remember I'd like scheduled this kind of private retreat to just like work on my book idea. And instead I spent the whole time trying to learn more about Bitcoin. So I, just very quickly realized like, oh, this is just this thing that I'm obsessed with. And so I think, in maybe, so if I started learning about it in May of 2015, I think in 2016, I originally, began saying, hey, I want to cover this full time. And at that time, because the area that I was covering, personal finance, I was generating a lot of page views for Forbes with that content, because that's something that just appeals to a wide audience. they were like, no, 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 you're not going to start up covering this obscure thing that nobody cares about. I mean, not using those words, but that was kind of the attitude. And so, then eventually in 2017, things in the industry were just really taking off. And I was like getting these other job offers and all this stuff was happening. So then finally they agreed to let me cover it full time. And then actually, so then the other thing that was happening was during that period when I only wanted to cover that, they'd been trying to hire me full time, but I didn't want to do it unless I could like only cover Bitcoin. So anyway, so then finally, when they were on board with me just doing that and nothing else, that's when I went full time with them. And
was there anything in particular that attracted you to this new technology so much? Was it just, hey, I can actually see the future and I can sense something's great here?
Yeah, I mean, so because I've been working on that FinTech 50 list, I was very well aware of what the problems were with the existing financial system. And so then when I learned about Bitcoin, I immediately understood like, whoa, this is a game changer. And I just could see, oh, that this is going to change things. But, Bitcoin is actually a very complicated thing, especially when you know nothing else and you're just coming in, right? And because now obviously there's so much that's happened since. So if you've been deep in the space, it might sort of be like, oh, Bitcoin, I got that, whatever. But at that time, it just like took a while to like really wrap your head around it. And there's just so many different rabbit holes to go into. And even now I feel like I'm only finally now really, really good at explaining Bitcoin, because like a part of it even is just the fact that the network and the asset itself are both they're given the same name. And so I think a lot of people kind of like confuse the sort of network aspects with the monetary aspects, because there's like certain parts of Bitcoin that they're a breakthrough for technological reasons. And then there are other parts of Bitcoin that are a breakthrough or fascinating because of the monetary reasons. And so there's just like a lot to unpack there. It seems like one thing, but it's actually multiple things. And not only that, but then when you kind of like step beyond Bitcoin and you like think about the significance, then it's just like this whole concept of decentralization, right? And just, like the crypto economics of Bitcoin was just another whole thing. And then realizing, oh, this can be applied to anything else that you want to create that's digital, And so, I guess it wasn't even, it was more the fact that my curiosity, like satisfying my curiosity on one score only led to deepening my curiosity on another level. And and so that's, I think why people call it falling down the rabbit hole, because it's like, you kind of understand on one level, but then you're like, oh, well, that raises more questions. And then you understand the next level. You're like, wait, and then you go, and so, I mean, it wasn't even like a conscious thing. It was just like, I just kept consuming more information and just like trying to understand it better.
You say, really, you can only explain Bitcoin? And here you are, you've written a book about Ethereum. I mean, trying to explain smart contracts, distributed and decentralized applications, that's a whole different ballgame.
I know. I like, honestly, I'm definitely, better at explaining Ethereum now, but Ethereum is quite complicated. I mean, the main thing is to just like simplify it down. And that's what, I tried to do in the book. Although people should know the book is what we call narrative nonfiction. So it's not a primer. You will never find a sentence where it's like, what is Ethereum? Ethereum is blah, blah, blah. I never say anything like that. But, through just trying to explain what happened, I do end up explaining Ethereum. But yeah, Ethereum is definitely more complicated. The way I did explain it in the book was that if Bitcoin, because the subtitle is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, if you think of Bitcoin as being built for payments, at least the network, obviously the asset behaves more like digital gold. Ethereum is more, like open-ended. So instead of a blockchain that has specific features, Vitalik tried to make it so that there weren't any features, but that anybody who wanted to create any decentralized application on Ethereum could upload an application to it, sort of like the App Store. like the Apple App Store where you have, photo apps alongside cooking apps and financial apps and whatever. And so, yeah, that was his conception for Ethereum. And the way he did it was through a programming language. And then that would enable all that creativity. And that's why, yeah, now we have NFTs and we have DAOs and we have DeFi. And yeah, so that's essentially what Ethereum is.
That was pretty impressive. For some, I have to refute your claim that you said you can only explain Bitcoin, because that was actually pretty impressive. So you mentioned there that you were away on a retreat to work on a book idea. This is 2015. I'm assuming this wasn't about crypto back in 2015.
No.
So if my research serves me correctly, this is your first published book right now?
Sort of. I previously wrote to Forbes ebooks, so they were only released digitally. And then I think Forbes discontinued them or something, because I don't think you can buy them anymore.
So that book that you were working on, that idea 2015, was it one of those, or did you have something else going on?
No, it's this other thing involving my ancestors. Basically, my ancestors are very cool people, basically.
Wow.
And I think they would make a good book.
Wow. Okay. So there's a whole lot more to come from Laura Shin in the coming years. So let's talk about Cryptopians. Did you start writing it late 2018, round about there?
Yeah, kind of. I worked on the pitch for it, the proposal to the book publishers in early 2018. But I don't think we actually got a finalized version until that summer. And then so that summer we shopped it around and sold it in late summer, early fall. And then I began working on it more in earnest. But yeah, it's definitely taken a while, as you can tell.
What's your easiest way to punch out chapters, punch out good chunks of the book? Is it getting away? Is it in your home, locking the doors? Is it your office? What works for you best?
Well, it definitely wasn't punching them out. I will definitely say that. I wish. There was so much research that went into this. So it was kind of a long time before I was able to write. But when I did, I would organize all of the material. I have this great program called Scrivener. Any writers who are listening to this, you will definitely want to use Scrivener. It's awesome. But I would kind of put the material on the left side in order that I was roughly thinking of using it in. And then I would use that as a guide to just trying to at that point, punch out the chapter. But so much work, went into just creating that setup where by the end, it was I kind of already knew, what the order would be, what I wanted to do with that chapter, that section. But yeah, it was a lot of work.
Now, I got to ask about physical tools, Mac or PC? If so, which PC?
Mac.
It's Mac, okay. And butterfly keyboard or these new Magic keyboards?
I will show you my keyboard. It's just this one, which is
the original Mac, the original Apple Magic keyboard. Okay, curious.
Yeah, because my laptop is elevated, you can, so the webcam can be on.
There's definitely something about Apple's hardware that makes typing easier. So, talking about the actual content of the book, what I've found fascinating, doing my research, listening to you, it's quite clear that this book is about what seems to be the Ethereum sort of origin story and what Ethereum as a platform poses for society. But the communications don't explicitly focus on Ethereum. Is there any particular reason for that?
Yeah, I didn't set out to write a book about Ethereum.
Right.
It ended up mostly being a book about Ethereum, but here's why. I started that proposal at the beginning of 2018, and the reason was because as we saw at the end of 2017, early 2018, we had just been through this crazy mania, this bubble, and it sort of felt like kind of the end of a story, sort of, like the climax where there's all this stuff building and it builds up to that moment. And then I thought, well, how did all that happen? And I wanted to write a story about that, about the 2017 ICO craze. That's essentially what I wanted to write a story about. And that is what the book is about ostensibly. But the thing is that didn't happen until the very end. And it really began with Ethereum. Ethereum was the main platform for all of the ICOs. And so in order to explain that mania, I ended up having to explain what Ethereum was, how it got started, how this all built. And really, honestly, because like a big chunk of the book ends up being about the DAO, which those are the middle 4 chapters. So the book is 12 chapters, and the middle 4 chapters are all about the DAO. And some of them are the longest chapters in the book because like so much happened then. It was crazy. But basically, so probably like, 3/4 of the book is about Ethereum. And then at the end, it kind of branches out into all the other stuff going on with the ICOs. So that's why, it's mostly a history of Ethereum, but really it's like meant to tell the story about that whole craze. And so, it's not just only about Ethereum.
Okay. So you obviously talk a lot about Vitalik's input, Charles Hoskinson's input, Joe Lubin. Are there any other characters that feature prominently?
Oh, yeah. I mean, in the very beginning, I have a list of all the characters just because, since it's decentralized and there's like all these different people that are involved at different points, I just felt the need for anybody who doesn't know much about the space to like just help them remember all these people were. And it ends up being 50 people in the beginning of the book in this list of characters.
Wow.
Yeah, because, you've got, I'll just give you kind of a quick overview, but there was that period when Ethereum just got started before the pre-sale. And there were a bunch of people that were working on kind of like getting the conditions right to establish this pre-sale, plus all the issues with the co-founders and everything. So all the co-founders are mentioned at that point, and all the administrative staff in Zook and just the other things that were going on at that time. And then once they did the crowd sale, then they were focused for almost the next year on building Ethereum. And then that kind of brought in a whole new set of characters. And at that time, they also kind of like rearranged things on the Ethereum Foundation. And that also brought in a bunch of new people. And then after Ethereum launched, the really, pivotal event that happened after that within that first year was the DAO. And so during the DAO period, then we've got this whole other new set of characters where, many of them were either building the DAO, or then after it got hacked, they were involved in rescuing it. And the rescue situation like really dragged on. So there's kind of a lot there. And then after that, then it's down to ICO stuff. And so since my Ether wallet was probably the main place where people were buying into these ICOs from, my Ether wallet becomes part of the story. And Poloniex was the biggest exchange for trading Ether at the time. So Poloniex becomes part of the story. And so it just kind of like branches out at the end, but that's why there were so many different people. And so when you ask me who is in the book, I mean, it's a long list.
Who features most prominently? Is it Vitalik?
Yeah, probably, just because he's the only person that, he's present throughout the whole entire book. It basically begins and ends with him. And
Okay.
frankly, I would say that, I didn't know this when I went to write it, but through my reporting, I realized like it's ended up being kind of like a coming of age story about Vitalik, actually, because just on a personal level, he started Ethereum when he was 19. He like wrote the white paper when he was 19. And then, at that time, he basically was a kid. And there were just a lot of people who saw the potential in Ethereum, and, they wanted in early because they knew if they got in early, they could become the Ethereum version of a Bitcoin millionaire. And he just did not have the wherewithal to deal with all those kinds of personalities and like even just like the life experience. I think he didn't understand that people could be that way, that there might be some people who might try to take advantage. And, he had to learn it the hard way. But by the end, he's definitely wisened up a little bit.
Do you reveal in the book who some of those sort of more nefarious characters were who simply had a land grab mindset?
I think people will figure out who they are just based on the events. The way it's written, it's literally just saying this is what happened, and then that happened, and then this happened, and it's just kind of going through all the events. But I think, for situations where people were quite critical of other people in the book, especially oftentimes when that happened, there would be multiple people who would be saying this thing, and the stories would be similar. And so, then it felt like, okay, so clearly this is a pattern. This is something, worth mentioning. And I ran everything by people. So if there was like negative stuff about them in the book, I would give them a chance to respond. Not everybody chose to respond back to me. Not everybody participated. So there are certain people who definitely, other people had negative things to say about them, but they never either responded to me or they declined to talk to me. So I didn't have, much to include from them. But, for others who did choose to respond, I have their responses, and, they explain themselves or defend themselves or whatever. So
I'm curious, and you're welcome to skip this question, but from my research and recall of your interviews, I don't think you've ever interviewed Charles Hoskinson. Does this have anything to do with, does this have anything to do with that?
I haven't had him on my show, but he did do one book interview with me. So you'll see there are some quotes from him and stuff like that in the book.
Okay, that'll be great. That's going to be really, really intriguing for the community to unpack. What was your favorite part of the book? Was it the DAO hack and what happened after that with the forking of the chain, etc.? Was it something else when you were working on this mammoth project?
So hopefully you won't be too disappointed, because I don't want to give a spoiler, but there is a storyline that involves someone who is known outside of crypto, but is not known to be involved with crypto.
Oh, yeah. This is a big story. So you have a scoop here in the book.
Oh, I have multiple scoops.
Wow.
Okay. There is so much news in the book, you guys. Sometimes I know book writers worry that an article will summarize everything. No. You have to read, because there's just so many bits of news and frankly, bombshells in the book, in my opinion. So yeah, definitely read the whole thing. But what I will say about this favorite moment of mine is, this person, they definitely did some interesting things. I guess we can put it that way. And there is a moment where something is proposed. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
And I won't say what ends up happening, but that is definitely my favorite moment in the book.
Okay, so this book is turning out to be basically crypto's version of Ben Mesrick's Social Network, right?
I've never read that. I only saw the movie. So I'm not sure.
Oh, that's a very good deflection. Okay.
No, but it's true. It's true. I haven't read that book.
All right. We'll have to let the audience and the readers decide. I mean, this is actually going to be big. We got a whole bunch of scoops coming out. And I think the story about a big tech person, is it a tech person you said who is known outside of crypto, but not in crypto? Are they in tech?
Yeah, you could put it that way.
Still so ambiguous. Okay. So Laura, we're running out of time here. Where to for Ethereum? Obviously, ETH 2.0 is now looking to even, change the way they classify ETH 2.0. A lot of people talking about the scaling. Where to for Ethereum, in your opinion?
Wow. So I probably can't really give much of a prediction, but what I will say is that Ethereum is definitely kind of at this major crossroads, frankly. It has this kind of leading position in terms of demand for the network and just the developer activity in the ecosystem. Obviously, I don't know if you saw that electric capital report, but just in terms of the developers it's attracting, it's definitely in a league of its own. But at the same time, there's definitely issues. People don't want to pay these fees. They're super expensive. They, even for me, I've had to do things on Ethereum for my business. And every time it's oh my God, it's it's painful, to try to pay these fees. So there's definitely a lot of competitors nipping at its heels, right? But, Solana, probably the one that most people talk about, is having its own issues. And who knows how that's going to play out. That's like a tricky thing, right? I mean, you're basically just going to move all this economic activity over to this other chain. It's sort of like just trying to change out the engine of an airplane mid-flight. I mean, it's going to be complicated. Granted, they've been working on it for a very long time, so I'm sure they've thought of like many, many, many different contingencies. So I'm probably they're probably like planning it out very carefully. They know what's riding on it. Hundreds of billions of dollars. But still, it's hard to do. And especially when they have all these competitors. So, it's really at this point, like Ethereum's game to lose, at least in terms of the smart contract space. And basically, I think what the next few years are going to be is Ethereum does have that first mover advantage, but also then it's going to have this kind of like legacy baggage. And so, I just really don't know if it's going to manage to maintain that position with, all these different factors at play.
I think that's where a lot of the developers even stand. They're kind of like, we are building the best that we can. We're not sure how this is going to work out. And I don't even think Vitalik and Joe and those, Gavin Wood and those kind of people in the early years, they knew what was to come.
No.
Do you see a couple of the other chains falling by the wayside, perhaps? A couple of the other projects, a couple of the other blockchains, or will they last? Because a lot of people thought that about Ethereum when Bitcoin was the leading cryptocurrency by a long shot, right? Do you think the others will survive?
I'm sure there will be chains that, they'll have kind of like minimal economic activity. We already see it playing out. There were certain chains that were like consistently in the top 10, and now they're kind of dropping down. And then the ones that have actual real economic activity are kind of moving up. But I don't see Bitcoin and Ethereum as being competitive. I see like Ethereum and Solana, I guess, or Ethereum and Avalanche, or whatever. They're just different chains, I feel like, that are definitely more competitive with each other. And then others I feel like are just different. But yeah, when it comes to certain chains, I think there's going to be, people already for years now have called them ghost layer ones. And we're just seeing them, kind of fade away more. And so there's probably always going to be like some value to them, just because there will be people who like lost their coins and can't move them, or, whatever. But, frankly, I think as the space develops more, then we're going to see more quality kind of rise to the top.
If you had to write another book, or, well, it sounds like you will, what's the next book going to be about?
Multiple people have asked me this, and I definitely do want to write another book because I had so much fun writing this book. It's definitely the most fun I've had professionally. So I just loved doing it. But I was saying to them, I kind of like need to see events play out a little bit more, because I feel like you can kind of only see in hindsight, like what the story was, or like what is important. So I'm like kind of collecting, as we call it, string, I'm like just noting, oh, this is kind of interesting, or that is interesting. But I don't feel like I've seen anything yet where I'm like, oh, clearly that, that's what everything is working toward. And now I can work back to figure out what was significant and what would go in the story. But, I've got my eye on, obviously the NFT thing is huge. So that maybe could be it. But I kind of wonder if it might end up being more about DAOs, because I feel like everything is moving toward the DAO thing. Yeah. And like this decentralized aspect is like very interesting to me, and DAOs in general. So a part of me wonders, because like basically both DeFi and NFTs are moving to DAOs. So I wonder if that's actually going to be the overarching trend. But yeah, like I said, I won't know until after like a certain moment. And then I can kind of look back and be like, oh, those are the key things that would go in a book.
You're not daunted about writing another book after the mammoth task that this one would have been?
No, because I had so much fun writing the first one. Seriously, even though it was a lot of work and hard work. It just was so fun.
More fun than hosting the podcast? Actually,
yeah. But the reason the two are like a good blend for me is like I'm naturally an extrovert. But I'm a creative person. So if you're creative, you kind of have to have like quiet time to do your creative work. And so it just like, it's a good mix for my personality where, I get that social time with the podcast and, kind of, can stay up on like current events a little bit more. And then the creative part of me can kind of like dig in and like do research. And then just at the end, try to create something like more perfect or, because obviously with the podcast, I'm doing it somewhat quickly. But yeah, like that blend, I feel like was kind of a perfect work balance for the last few years. I loved it.
Okay, final question. What advice would you give to people just getting into crypto, specifically on the African continent, which a lot of our audience are sort of middle class, perhaps the lower end of middle class compared to more affluent states. What advice would you give those kind of people just entering crypto now for the first time?
Wow. Well, I would say that, if you're going to just get started, you probably just want to learn about it a little bit. So maybe don't put a ton of money in to start, just enough where you can kind of like understand, what are the differences between the chains? What do they do? Like, why is this one kind of important or significant? Or why is this one maybe, like is it really all the hype? Just kind of trying to figure out like, where is their actual substance and value? And then maybe once you feel like you really understand, what something is, why you might want to like invest in it or participate it in a bigger way, then maybe you could put more money in, but obviously not more than you are willing to lose because, I mean, yeah, at the time we're recording, there's just been news about a huge hack. So there's a lot of things that are happening right now in the industry because it's new and we're growing and things are not all figured out. It's not, like buying an ETF or something like that. So I would say, participate and understand what it is that you are buying.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. That's such a great point, is that this industry is still so nascent, even though it's almost over a decade old now. I mean, it is technically, if you count Bitcoin, it's still so nascent. And I think that's really the key. And that's coming from someone who's been writing about this since 2015, folks. Laura, it has been such a pleasure to talk to you. This time has flown by. Thank you for giving us this time.
Yeah, thank you. It's been really fun.
It really has been. Can't wait to see the book, get it out. And do send us a couple of copies over here for an event here in Africa. We'd love to get the word out to the local crypto community here.
Okay, perfect. Will do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Laura. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone.